Okay, Shoal, thank you so very much for joining us for IT Web TV. Really appreciate it. And for jumping in and telling us what are the local innovations that you're seeing that are really changing the industry.
Thank you very much, and thank you for joining here at Netstar. Yeah, as Netstar, we are at the brink of innovation. I think people underestimate the amount of technology that goes into the services that we provide. And telematics has changed significantly over the years, going from just a dot on the back where people can see where their car is to much more integrated services, actually providing end-to-end solutions to customers, not just to track their car, but to keep their family safe and making sure that they have almost like a lifestyle approach towards their safety.
Can you talk us through what you mean by that, the
So,
lifestyle approach?
so obviously, it is one thing tracking your car. It's a different thing tracking where your university student daughter is in terms of her car versus where she is. So we have started a lot of services to say, well, how do we protect the person and not just the car? So if a person is in trouble, can we deploy a team to be at your daughter's side in case of emergency within minutes to help her in case she actually needs it?
So she's separated from her car. You need to find her.
100%. So it's about tracking the things you love. It's about tracking not just your car. It's tracking your assets, tracking people you love, and making sure that we can actually provide a service to support the assets or people or cars, in case it is actually needed.
So how do you track a physical person? I mean, you don't insert a chip in them like I would for my dog. So how do you get that right?
So we have a lot of new devices that we've launched recently. So we have our new StarTag BREs that we've launched, and which is basically it is a credit card size sticker, a sticker that you can stick on anything. You can stick it on a shoe and track where a person is walking or running. Very nice for runners or tracking your kids because, for example, I have in my kids' school shoes, I have a sticker that I actually pick in a shoe, and you can actually track where they are they school, another school, or somebody can have, so you can actually track them. Or we have different devices. So we've got different devices from tracking motorbikes, bicycles, laptops, and all of these devices are devices that's got a battery life between 6 months to 3 years. And you can just stick it on anything you want and you can track it. And then as part of our services, we can then recover those devices or people in case of emergency.
Okay, so you would send out a road crew in a helicopter or whatever the case is. Is this something that's happening in the broader industry that you're seeing, this move to that sort of technology?
No, I think we are a little bit ahead of the industry. We are a little bit more innovative, I think.
Well, you would say that.
100%. Yeah, so we are a little bit more innovative. So we are growing away from just being a dot on a map to actually providing solutions. But even more than that, driving artificial intelligence to not just give you a location, but to be predictive in terms of what might happen. So in a new age of AI, we can do a lot more in terms of insight and foresight, being able to predict things before it actually happens. And that is where we are driving our new technology stack.
So, Shoal, what would you say the trends internationally are that you're seeing coming into the country?
Yeah, there's actually quite a few. I think when we start from most telematics devices use cell phone networks. The whole move from away from 2G has a significant impact in terms of operations across Africa. And that has created a big move towards 4G. We also see a lot of work in crowdsourced BLE devices, typical what you'll find in something like an Apple AirTag. We have our own devices that looks very similar. And then, of course, we do see a big trend, yet again, in terms of connectivity in low orbit satellites, moving away from just the normal terrestrial networks, but looking at satellite connectivity, tracking anything anywhere in the world to support our customers globally as they move across borders. Then I think the next big trend that I think it's not just in the telematics industry, but is across all industries, the utilization of artificial intelligence that allows us to be a little bit more predictive, automate a lot of work, and allows us to have a little bit more foresight in the amount of data that is being processed. A company like Netstar, just to give you context, currently we receive about 9,000 transactions, 9,000 messages a second. If you just look at how much data that is over an hour's period or even a year, it is billions and billions of messages that we process. So I think this is where the world is, not just the telematics industry, but the whole world is moving towards. You have got all this data moving in, you have to make sure that you have the right insights from those data to make the right decisions.
So when you say messages, what sort of messages are you talking about?
So when I talk about the 9,000 messages per second, it is purely the messages that we receive from people's cars or assets. So basically tracking messages that comes into our backend. You could see, for example, in the back, we're tracking and making sure everybody is safe. So it is a lot of data that we need to look at. I think the next big thing in terms of trends is the connected vehicles. OEMs are changing the way that vehicles operate and have their own telematics devices built into the cars. And we as Netstar, and I think most the companies are looking at how to integrate these cars but better. And through our OEM relationships, we have started a number of projects to connect to the OEM's telematics devices as well as ours.
Now, can you talk about that without giving away any secrets?
That is very difficult. Like I said, we're a little bit in the forefront of technology. But I think it is common knowledge that most owners of high-end cars knows that when you buy a BMW or VW or Ford, you get an application that's running on your phone where you can see where your car is. You can see what is the tire pressure of that car. You can see where the car is. You can unlock it. You can start that car from your application on the phone. And that comes basically from a standard vehicle that you buy off the shelf. So basically these vehicles already transmit a lot of data that is then transmitted to the cloud, and we basically then process that data not to just recover that vehicle but also provide other services. So for example, one of our new OEMs that we're working with, as soon as an airbag deploys and it is transmitted by the vehicle that the airbag has deployed, we can send ambulances. So it becomes this whole new ecosystem of how to process data, and it's tons and tons of data that comes from a vehicle and provide services to keep everybody safe.
And I imagine also that the insurance companies would be keen on knowing if somebody's had an accident as well, because you have insurance companies that do offer that sort of service. So when there's an accident, they go and help you.
100%. So it is not about just recovering for the accident, but also if somebody is in trouble. So pressing a SOS button on your phone app, or even most new vehicles does have little buttons in the car. As soon as you press that SOS button, we send out the security team to make sure that you are okay. And with that, it becomes the time to respond is so much shorter. And it just creates this added services that we built on top of our products in Netstar. And I think that's basically where the industry is going, is around processing a lot of data and adding services. I think we as a nation, and like the rest of the world, is moving into this instant gratification space where if you want a car, you get an Uber. If you want something to eat, you get Uber Eats or Mr. Delivery. So most companies have to adapt to this instant response that our customers actually expect from us. So it's about being proactive and providing these services before the customer even knows he wants it or needs it.
And I suppose a lot of people will, I mean, when you get hijacked, for example, one of the first things they ask you is, do you have a tracker? And that's the word that they tend to use. How sophisticated is the industry becoming in hiding tracking items? I
think it is changing. I think as part of where the industry is going, not just as tracking organizations or vehicle telematics organizations, but also OEMs, these devices are becoming a lot more embedded as part of the vehicle. So if you remove it, the vehicle stops. So that I think is one of the big changes that's going to happen in the next few years as it filters through high-end vehicles to lower-end vehicles. But I think we've been very successful in deploying different devices. Many of the devices that we are currently deploying in vehicles, if you don't know what you're looking for, you will never ever find it. It is not the old traditional way of there's a little black box and you find a black box, and when you find a black box, you rip it out, everything stops. It has changed significantly in the way that technology allowed us to shrink devices and to repackage devices and things that cannot be seen.
Okay, so that's very much like what happened to my brother-in-law the other day when he drove into Swaziland instead of discussing this with the rental car people, and his car stopped. That's the very sort of thing that you're talking about.
100%. So remote mobilization is part of the services that we do. And whether it is somebody that takes a car for a joyride, or you actually take your car out of a specific region that you're not supposed to, we can then deploy remote mobilization and actually stop the car. And these things are becoming more and more sophisticated as we grow in our technology stack.
Okay, so I remember the last time I was here, Grant was very excited about your solutions in terms of driver behavior. So if the driver starts falling asleep, a trucker driver just had a long shift, or he stops unexpectedly, he was quite excited about those solutions.
Yeah, so I think this is actually got a reason to be excited because it is actually quite exciting. I think where technology is moving in terms of artificial intelligence, it becomes an integral part of keeping people safe. And as part of what we do, we have multiple solutions from an AI perspective. The solutions that Grant previously spoke about is our camera solutions. So basically, we have a number of camera solutions that is AI driven, one camera that is road facing, and one camera that's driver facing.
So a bit like a dash cam.
100% like a dash cam, a very smart dash cam. And so basically these dash cams can alert an owner or even the driver to say, well, if you currently drive the way that you're currently driving because you're driving over a red line or yellow line and you're not allowed to drive this way, or you're driving too close to another vehicle. So it alerts the fleet manager to say, well, this driver is driving a little bit erratic. But also because it's driver facing, you can see, well, is this driver getting fatigued? Is this driver wearing his seatbelt, or is this driver busy on the phone? And all of these events can then be triggered to the fleet owner to say, but this driver, maybe he just needs to stop for a while and rest of it.
Now, I suppose what they do with the information is up to them.
100%. And then, of course, with our normal vehicle trackers, we do a lot of driver behavior analytics. So we can see if it's the same driver, different driver, because every person has got different ways of driving. So we have a multitude of accelerometers in these devices that basically measures every 200 milliseconds how this vehicle is moving. And from the data, we can actually derive certain driver behavior patterns.
Super. And also, with truck drivers that carry a load of expensive TVs, for example, you can monitor each individual TV through technology.
100%. As we stated previously, we because we do asset tracking as well, we don't just track the truck and the driver, but we also can track everything that's on that truck. And as the TVs move from one country to the next, we can exactly see how these TVs are dispatched to different customers.
Okay, so it's the same as tracking your child at university.
100%.
So that brings us to regulations. For example, if you're tracking your child and she's a minor, that's one thing. But then we bring in aspects like the Protection of Personal Information Act, and AI doesn't have any particular guardrails. How do you work around the limitations of regulation, which are there obviously for a very good reason, but also the lack thereof?
Yeah, that is a tricky space, especially around new technologies in our country, because there's not always a regulation to say, well, if if somebody else uses a piece of technology outside the scope of the intended use. So, for example, if you use an Apple AirTag and you put it on somebody's car, that is actually, to a large extent, it is intruding on somebody's personal information. And as technology evolves, these things become more and more tricky to identify and to monitor and to keep somebody legally liable for that.
Is there is there an industry sort of association where everybody's talking around how we can solve for this?
Yeah, currently not that I'm aware of. I do think from a regulator perspective, I think there's a lot of movements towards how to regulate this a lot better. But I think currently, because the technology is moving so quickly, it is very difficult for regulators to keep up with the pace. Right. And I think that becomes a problem, because you actually rely on value systems of people rather than the regulator protecting you, because it actually moves so quick.
Yes, I mean, there's no way you can tell if somebody has taken your tag and moved it to somewhere it shouldn't be.
100%. You have no control over it.
Yeah, unless you make it self-imploding, which won't work.
100%.
Can't say people on fire. So, Charles, as we look forward to 2030, which is in 4 years, can you believe? What do you see happening in this industry? Where do you see innovation going? Where do you see the whole sector moving in terms of mobility, telematics, technology, AI, IoT? Do you have a crystal ball?
I actually have a master's degree in future studies, so I actually do have a crystal ball. Yeah, all jokes aside, I do think telematics industry is moving in some aspects a little bit slower than other industries, and so what we see is a convergence of services and data. We have seen this in other industries a little bit earlier. We're seeing a rapid movement towards convergence in different services and telematics data. And an example that I can give you this is that let's use a arbitrary example to say you have a driver that drives down a specific road in Sandton, and you understand this driver because you understand the driver behavior. This driver usually stops at a specific shop. That shop can, for example, push a little advert to this person to say, we know you usually come and do bread and milk at this shop every week. Today we have a special on bread, and you actually push that advert when a person drives past that specific shop.
Although they would have to comply with all the laws about direct marketing there.
100%. So it's all about what you subscribe to, but it's about the convergence of services using different data. So convergence of, as we spoke before, this whole notion of instant gratification. So instant services in terms of what you want. So obviously there's laws around it, and it's the same thing about something like you drive a car. You know that your tires. We know your tires were replaced at a specific period of time. We know your tires can only last a certain period of time, like 30,000 kilometers, and then notifying to say, well, we realize that your tires need to be replaced. Can we help you schedule a service for that? So it's about integrating all of these things over time. The data just becomes the enabler, but where the industry is going and where I think the rest of the world is going is the convergence of services utilizing these data a lot better.
John, you've spoken a lot about innovation here. Are there any barriers to this? Are there any issues with trying to push up new technology, develop new technology, research new technology? Where are you being held back?
Yeah, I think South Africa as a whole is always a little bit on a back foot. So if you look at already spent per GDP in our country, I think the last statistics that I saw was about 1.8% of GDP.
Sure.
Where most other countries are sitting about 6%.
Oh,
So I think as a whole, our country is not necessarily spending the amount of money in new technology or new innovation as we should. And that was basically creates a big barrier for us to leapfrog or keep up to a lot of the other big innovators globally. But saying that, there's always ways of getting past it, and so the ways of getting past it is to partner with the right people and right technology partners to take you on that journey, so that you are part of that big technology wave as you move out. So I think the biggest problem or constraint in our country is around funding for innovation.
Okay.
Creating the right innovation value chain or partnerships, so to support local South Africa, so that we don't use devices that comes from a R&D company in China or Europe, but that we actually have local supply chains that actually does innovation, that we can actually absorb some of these technologies much quicker and much better.
And we do, as far as I know, have a lot of skills in this area. If you look at what the CSIR is doing and the National Research Foundation funding researchers that are going off and doing some amazing things in theoretical physics or particle physics or whatever the case is. So I think if you're right, I think if we just funded them a bit more, we could push some great innovation. Maybe one of the issues is the value chain further down. We don't, as you say, have those devices here.
100%. And I think those innovation systems, as they are called, are very important to go from fundamental research into applied research into industry. And sometimes these chains are not always managed well or a little bit broken. So the way that the South African innovation chain is structured is that universities by default are usually involved in the fundamental research, creating the papers, and creating these new blue sky ideas. And these blue sky ideas then moves into a CSR that actually go and take the blue sky ideas and create applied research, build something else, and then that must be absorbed by industry. I think sometimes the chain is broken. We don't understand each other's problems well, because research must be problem driven or future looking driven, to say where is the industry going, as we discussed today, and how do we do research to actually make our industry more competitive in 5 years or 10 years time. And for that, we need to close the loop in terms of collaboration. Like I said, creating those collaboration chains to make sure that we solve the right problems. So I do think there's a lot of innovation in our country, and I think if you start looking at organizations like Amazon and Google that is creating a big presence in Cape Town, and part of it is because our local developers and engineers are really innovative people, and that is coming very strongly from global players to say, well, we want to be in South Africa because we have very innovative skills here. That entrepreneurial skill is very important. And combining that entrepreneurial skill with new development is actually where we're going to take the world.
Oh, that's fantastic. We have the ability. We just need to go for it.
100% agree.
Great. Thank you. Shel, thank you so very much for joining us today. I appreciate your insights, and I hope our audience will as well.
Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us here at Netstar.